Hey there, Michael Curtis here, front of house and systems engineer. Today, I'm pumped to partner with SoundPro as I share an exciting announcement from our friends at Allen Heath. You're probably familiar with their awesome D-Live, Avantis, and SQ Series mixers, but what about when you have to get your mix out to a bunch of places? Right? So you don't want to eat up all your matrices and eat up all the I/O, right? You want to be able to send it to something that can offload it, and no matter what mixer is there, you can assure that it is handled. That's where the AHM Series processors come in. So it's a rack mount unit that has varying sizes, the AHM 16, 32, and 64. It can handle all routing, processing, and distribution for your rig. So they released it a few years ago. It definitely made a splash. It's affordable, robust, and really intuitive to use, but now here's the announcement, the fun part. We now have firmware V1.5, and they've been listening to end users like me and have definitely made some advances. So I'm going to get you comfortable with the unit as a whole. Maybe if you haven't used it before, I'm going to show you an example setup for a live gig, and then we're going to transition into those new features. It is faster, more intuitive, and they've added some special DSP that I've been wanting for a while. So again, super pumped to share it with you. Stick around, and we're going to check out the Allen Heath AHM 16 right here in my studio. Let's jump right in. I've got my AHM 16 racked up back here with a Dante card in it, but I want to show you what it looks like a little bit more up close and personal. This is from Allen Heath's website. That AHM 16 is 1 RU, so nice and compact. It's got some buttons on the front that you can configure to control whatever you want. And on the back here, it has a card slot, which is empty in this picture. Again, mine has the Dante card. It got some GPIO out if you want to do some fancy pants controlling of stuff. It's got a network port for you to be able to control the unit. And then here is the analog ins and outs. So these are terminal or Phoenix blocks, and you have 8 in, 8 out. Okay, so that's what's going to be referred to within the software as local in and out. So even though you can control features and see some data about the unit from the window or the little screen right here, but mostly you're going to be controlling it from AHM System Manager. So here is a beta release of version 1.5. I'm going to be unpacking a show file in this scenario, then slowly unveiling some of these new features as we go. All right, so it looks a little overwhelming to see all this at first, but I'm going to break it down for you. The main tabs you're going to be working with is here, the channel tab, and here on inputs. So I can control the system, configure a few things, manage, blah, 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 blah. But this is the main tab you're going to be using to put together your file. So this has inputs, which here on the left, and I've got 16 inputs, and I use those to process the audio somehow in between it. And at the end, I use the cross-point routing to send it somewhere else. And that somewhere else is a zone. So it can serve as a downstream place, which you can send inputs and then process them again. So they have a little bit different set of processing. And then finally, they flow to an output of sorts. So this could be the analog output, or it could be through the card output. And so let me step through now here our actual show scenario, and then we'll start to unpack things from left to right. So our show is we are doing a festival stage. We've got 2 acts, and the production company did not give us a production desk. That means a separate desk to handle the hosts that are going to get up on stage and introduce each act. And those acts are traveling and don't want to have those microphones in there because they want to be able to pack up and leave whenever you want. So again, that's the advantage of having a separate processor versus trying to do too much within your desk, and a great value add for this unit. I also want to be able to do walk in and walk out music in between acts, so have that coming into my desk as well. So here I have on the left, opener right. So that's the stereo mix output from those acts, that act. And then I have headliner left, headliner right. Okay. Then we move on to tunes left, tunes right. So this is the whatever music playback I'm using to have walk in and walk out music. This could be an iPod or something running Dante virtual sound card and piping it in to the console. And I have host 1 and host 2. Right now I have it on a local input, so this would just be analog. I've got a mic preamp here if I need it. This could just as easily be maybe a Shure ULXD unit that has Dante and is sending the signal out over network into my desk. That could be, that could be permanently racked up in the venue, and you don't have to worry about it. This is also a great use case to show you that, hey, we will want to be able to have like a small prayer gathering for our church. And all we need is one microphone. People are really intimidated by the console, and actually something simple. You could set up a preset within this AHM that just pulls up a single fader that could push up and down on an iPad app or on this IP8. This is a controller. So I've got it right here in front of me. But I'm opening the simulator right here, and I've mapped out a few of the faders to have. So this could be sitting right next to the desk and say, great, just turn on the system. Don't even have to turn on the console. And I've got this host mic. So this could be a double patch or maybe a vocal microphone coming into your desk, but it's also patched here. And we don't have the main console feed coming in, and we can just simply turn up one microphone, easy peasy, already have the processing built in, and away you go. So another really cool use case of this unit is simplifying what needs to happen audio-wise for those who might not be more capable volunteers or audio professionals. And it's a single fader, don't have to worry about touching the big scary console. Now, coming back to our channels with these host microphones, I wouldn't want to send just a raw, unprocessed microphone to the system, but I've got that right here. So here I've done some general EQ, a high pass filter, and cutting out some low mids. I've got a compressor that I can dial in. Then also I have the AMM, automatic mic mixer. So this is Allen Heath's take on a auto mixer. So what it's able to do is able to prioritize audio in whichever input is louder and then bring the other down so that you have more gain before feedback with a bunch of open microphones. Again, this is built in under the hood, and you don't have to actively manage it if you know those microphones are going to be with each other. So that makes it even easier for those who maybe don't have the most amount of audio experience to be able just to throw up a microphone and even have two on stage at the same time and not have to worry about doing a bunch of fader moves to make sure they are stable. So again, right here, you could see that earlier I was moving the host microphone, and it's tracking right here in the software, and it has the readout here on the panel as well. So as I'm moving to the end, I have to make sure all these inputs now get somewhere, ultimately a speaker of some sort, but in between, I have my cross-point routing. So if I click here, I have opener left, and that's what I have selected, and it's going to two zones right now. I have shed left and VIP. So shed is the general name, just I'm at a shed venue today, and I'm holding that separately from VIP. This is a stage that's off somewhere else close to the venue that might need to control a little bit differently than the main mix that everyone is hearing in the venue. So right now these are set at Unity. I can of course adjust levels. I can also right click and set to 0, a handy feature that I just found out yesterday. So now I can move over to my zones and now see what's happening downstream. So again, all these inputs are coming in via the local input or local I/O card. And this could also be SoundGrid or even an S-Link card you can get for other Allen Heath products. They're going through some sort of processing, manage the levels, mute, and then they get passed over to these zones. So my top two zones I call shed left, shed right. And so these are the top level for that main PA. And the blue ones here in the middle are the individual speaker zones. So I have main left, main right, which is just a speaker on a stick for each of them. I have sub front, sub rear. So this is a fancy pants cardioid array that I'm going right here. And I can do the necessary delay on the rear sub and the polarity inversion here, right here on the output to make that recipe happen. And for this particular gig, I've got 4 delay speakers. So I have a delay left 1, left 2, delay right 1, right 2. So I want to be able to make sure all those are getting the right signal. So again, I look here on the cross-point routing, I can see that main left is receiving shed left, which is receiving mix input left from each of my 2 acts. It's getting both of my hosts and the tunes input left. And if I move on to a right speaker, so main right is getting shed right, which is also then receiving my opener right feed, my headliner right feed, tunes right, and both of my host microphones. So we kind of have to think just in linear order how everything is flowing. And we're just unpacking the Russian dolls here. So then let's, for instance, look at main left. I'm just starting with a high pass filter on this speaker. Maybe it's a passive speaker where I have to do my own processing, or I just want to have everything here and not use the active speakers processing. I could pop in a GEQ a graphic or add another layer of parametric, which is pretty awesome. Add a compressor. I usually don't do that on a PA speaker since a lot of it has its own built-in limiting with active speakers. Then I can add delay. So now we're kind of creeping into active system engineering tuning things that we need to access. So that is usually what I'm changing when I'm tuning systems. A part where I've got the design right, got the placement right. I'm adjusting the tonality, level, and delay and polarity, or the four main things I'm adjusting. It's all right here in one place. So this is the master level of that zone. And then I can also feed through separate speaker processing. We'll circle back to that in a second, but just to complete our loop from left all the way through these processes to right, I now have my local output, and this is an output slot. So in this case, I've just routed main left to local output number 3. Again, that would be that Phoenix connector or terminal block that's on the back of the unit. It's analog, and it's going to go right out. I could just as easily just send it to any of these I/O port outputs at the same time. So it's just, in my case, be sending it onto the Dante network, and it can go to multiple places at the same time. I'm just going to keep things simple and run analog today. And this is also where you're going to find your polarity switch, and you also have an output limiter if you want some extra protection. Now let's come to this VIP zone. I have the routing a little bit differently, as everything right here in blue was receiving the shed left, shed right zone. If I needed to mute the shed PA for some reason, but keep VIP going, I want to have that separate. So I actually have a source, all of these 8 inputs upstream of it, all coming there at unity. And so I have those, but it is governed by the master level controller set up here on the panel because it's moving the levels upstream on the input. This is showing me the cross point levels. So the equivalent of the send value of that input to this zone. So for VIP. Could edit the routing here. That's where I selected all of them. And now I can move this through the chain, adjust any EQ. And let's say, this is a really far away stage, but we still hear some in the main. I need to delay it 120 milliseconds to make sure it matches. No problem at all. But you're saying, well, man, it's just a couple of passive speakers on sticks and a passive sub, but oh man, I don't have a external crossover to put in line. All I have is the amp, but that subwoofer is just going to go all the way up to 2K, and I need to band limit it. Well, no problem. You have speaker processing right here. So I selected, I put this as 2-way. I can adjust the crossover or frequency divider for those keeping score at home. I put it here at 100 Hertz, a pretty common place. And I've checked here the mono sub box. So I've unchecked it now, and let's look at our outputs. So full range, I really like that they kept that I can still pass the signal unaffected by the speaker processing out to wherever, which is awesome. But here on the low side is which I would put to a sub, it's only sourcing the left channel, and I can't also send the right channel here to number 5. It's going to rob it, on the I/O port, rob it from number 5, right? So I don't want that. And so I want to go here, back to speaker processing, hit mono sub, and now it's going to combine left and right into a single output for me, so I don't have to eat up any more zones to bring everything down to where it needs to be. So then I take the high side of the processing, basically everything above 100 Hertz in this specific circumstance. And then I also have another layer of processing if I can pop in a graphic or a parametric EQ and adjust the tops separately or the sub separately from the mains, put in a limiter, whatever I need to do. And this is not eating up another zone. This is built into the speaker processing block. So you can manage this allocation of processing that's shared between zones and speaker processing by going over to configure. We're on the unit tab, go to zones configuration, and we have 16 total zones or kind of DSP slots, as I kind of like to think about it, on the AHM 16. See what they did there? And right now I'm using 12 zones for the actual zones themselves. And this is also where I do my stereo processing, stereo pairing. But then I can go to speaker processing, and I can use 4 of those later to be able to do further processing. And then now that's where on the channel view, I'm able to have access to what's going on right here. I want to cover 2 last new features within speaker processing, and then we'll actually move on to some workflow changes when actively tuning a system. So we can go here and link and unlink right here the parameters between low and high. This is handy if you want to keep these together and make sure they match, speeding things up. Let me put it back at 100. Or let's say I'm using some very mismatched mains and subs that I might need to do more aggressive work with how much they overlap or are separated. They can now be changed. Pretty cool. And then next we have an all-pass filter. This is super fun. So an all-pass, if you're unfamiliar, is a filter that adjusts the phase response without adjusting the magnitude response. So usually when I take an EQ filter and boost maybe 6 dB at 1K, we see a boost in the amount of energy there, but we also see a change in phase response. So with this, I can adjust the phase response or timing over frequency of that signal. Let me put it back here at 1K, and this is showing us the change in the phase graph. So I have a first order filter, which shows us a 90-degree phase shift at 1K, the frequency that we set here. I also have a second order filter, and that shows me 180 degrees of phase shift. That can also adjust the quality factor or Q and tighten it up. So it's a very flexible filter and it's helpful for what? It's like, great, that's fancy pants all pass. The most common use case is being able to adjust the phase response of two speakers so they can marry better when they are combining in acoustic space. I'll show you an example here. So if I move over to Data Modeler, I've got here in DSP channel 1, I've loaded up a trace of a large format PA. And then right here, the magenta color, if you like Bob Ross, we've got a front fill speaker that I need to marry up with the mains. So we see the phase traces aren't perfect, but they're trending similar, about 60 degrees apart, which is passable, but then they deviate wildly here from 2K and up. And so if I want the intelligibility or the upper frequencies between those two zones to combine and behave with each other, I need to make sure their timing over frequency is as similar as possible. And I care about it because all these frequencies are very similar to my mains in level. So what I can do here is I went ahead and added in a all-pass filter right where I felt the deviation started to drift off the most. And if I put that in, bam, you see how the phase response changed, and now that is later, and we are lining up now all the way up to AK. So that's another 2 octaves of improvement of where we're able to line up with what we got there between the main speaker and the front fills. So it's not a panacea, it's not used all the time, but it's a handy tool to have in the toolbox. Again, another example of Allen Heath listening to their user base and adding in features that they requested, and I requested it a while back, and I'm so glad that it's here now in I almost said the flesh, but in the silicon, whatever. So we're back here. So we're going to move on from speaker processing now and go back to actual tuning. And I'm super stoked to show you what they've made some improvements with the parametric EQ. All right, so I've here got my zones. And again, it is shed left and right, which is the master or the master feed of the PA to all these different places. So I'll probably back up and do some EQ on the entire PA after I've got all my individual zones right. So I'm going to leave all these flat, but right here on main left, I've made some adjustments here. And how I got it to main right is I went copy 2 and I went to main right and hit OK. So not too bad, but I've had to copy that over. But now if I move down to my delay speakers, I've got delay left 1, 2, and then right 1 and 2. These are flat right now, but I need to tune these. These are for all the same speaker in an arc covering same distances, so I'm willing to bet they're going to get similar processing, right? So if I move here to parametric EQ, those of you with sharp eyes will see down here in the bottom right, I've got now a new button called Multi. So what I can do here is this is now when my brain what I call the reference block. So I hit Multi and it's looking at left L1. I'm going to select other parametric EQs to link it with. So I'm going to go here to zone parametric EQs, delay left 2, right 1, and right 2, hit OK, and now I see them right here. I'm going to go up to our first mode, which is absolute, which means it's going to follow with what's happening. So delay left 1. I'm now going to increase the top in there, and I see it moves with the others. And I could click on one to have it not follow if I wanted to do something else. And so it's now able to follow, which is pretty cool. So I have that here. And now if I go to relative, now I can make a change where let's do this filter. But now I'm going to go to just this one, do it, change it a little bit more, and now come back. And now it's going to make a relative adjustment and not follow exactly what's going on. And now if I go to mirror, it's going to mirror exactly what's happening on the one that I've selected right here. Pretty cool. Another feature they added is the ability to bring bands in and out. This wasn't there before, so now I can audition any changes band by band, not just the parametric EQ as a whole. So in would take the entire EQ circuit out. Band in would just do with the corresponding color band. So that's not too many clicks to go here, hit multi, select, bring the other ones in. But what if I wanted to do that even faster? Well, we've done exactly that. And so now I can go back to the left lay one. I can hold Control, Command, and click, and it's selected here. It's popped it up in this little window. So I can also go here and be able to see signals in a bird's eye view of everything without going into that menu. And now I can do the same thing, Control, Command, click on all these, and now they're all going to follow, which is pretty cool. So it's a much faster way to access every band. I can still adjust the modes right here between mirror, absolute. I also have undo, redo, which is pretty cool. So I can go back and forth and audition any of the changes. I can select any band. I can that was bypassed. I'm going to bring the band in. So it's a new workflow for me to get used to. I brought these two out. So now I'm going to adjust it, and now it's back to here. So again, very flexible and a quick way to start linking things depending on how you want to process. Another new feature I'd like to be able to share with you is the ability to have a zone as a loopback input into your inputs. So if we go back here to input 9, I've combined these as a stereo input 9 and 10. I've gone to the input source and I've chosen here zone outputs and zone 11 and 12. So zone 11 and 12, if you remember, is my VIP. So what I want to do this. So the use case I'm thinking in my brain is that I want to be able to monitor on a wedge that's next to me at any point what is happening at the VIP stage after the processing and after my level. So if the VIP stage is down, I don't want it to come through my wedge. But if it's up, I want to be able to bring that wedge up and down at my leisure and be able to check in on it. So what I did is I routed that zone back to an input. I'm going to rename it here zone mon for zone monitor, or sorry, VIP mon. I got it right here. I'm going to make it red so I recognize that in the match earlier, that I can actually have it as a direct out, which is pretty cool. So I can go to input direct outs, go back over here to VIP mon, go right here, and then right there, I have it at, I can offset the level if I want. So if I go to the sign tab, I can go over to IO Patch Bay, go to input direct outs, and I can go to VIP mon left, and I can choose any of the IO ports. Let's just call it a Dante port number 31 and 32. And I can have that piping out to maybe an in-ear pack off to the side or another wedge. And now I can park this on my IP8 if I wanted to and bring up at any time what's happening at the VIP stage, knowing that's taking into account with the signal I'm sending to it or not. It can kind of an edge use case, but this is really cool to be able to have that flexibility if I wanted to. I can see this very useful maybe with matrixing and processing. So anyway, that's really cool that you can now take a zone, pipe it back in as an input. We're going to end with some pragmatism here, and I'll summarize. So up here under config and then profiles, I can now give some user permissions. So this is really cool if maybe you're the system engineer over a whole rig, but you want to give someone who's maybe remoting in some access to what's happening on so they can tune on their own and not just have to shout at you and relay parameters. So I can go over here to user 2. Let's edit a comment, say this is a guest engineer. Boom. That is there. I can even set a password from if we want. And now I can set permissions. So now I do not want them to be able to configure my unit. I want to give them zone and input processing, crossover processing. I don't want them to be able to handle this, assign IO or cross points. I just want to really limit what they're able to do, but also give them the freedom to do so within that scope. So I hit OK. And now when they connect with their computer, either Mac or Windows, load up this software, they put in their user and password, and they can have access to that. I can drink my coffee while they tune and be off to a great show. All right, we've covered a lot of ground here, and I still feel like we've only scratched the surface of what this unit can do. We've got even more inputs. We can get an AHM 64 with 64 zones and handle an even bigger show. I really love, again, the flexibility and robustness of it, but still some handrails you can grab onto so you're not having to drag on each individual processing block. I can route basically anything anywhere. I love that you have a card slot so you can go to whatever language or digital audio transport you need to use. It's been a great unit, and I'm so excited that Allen Heath keeps on pouring resources into making it even better and listening to us. If you have any more questions, make sure and go to soundpro.com and reach out to your account rep. Again, my name is Michael Curtis. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I'm super excited about the future of this unit and how else I'm going to be using it in the field, even just this next week, and I'll catch you next time.